Garland got inside Smart, faked the pass to Allen, and he puts it up and in. Garland up ahead with a Okoro, goes there. Oh, Okoro throws it down with bad intentions. Sexton works on Irving, trying to get loose. He'll fire. Hey! Knocks it down.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tournament wages, you are listening live here to episode number 15 of the All Things Cleveland Cavaliers podcast. I am your host, Brandon Lewis, alongside my co-host, Joey Snyder.
Holy God, Brandon, the Cavs are just amazing. I cannot wait to talk about today. I mean, I'm shaking. This is what we needed. We have been waiting all week. This is 8 days, I think. We had a little bit of an extra time for this podcast. 3-1 in their last four, third place in the East, a game and a half out of first place. I came home from work last night and I was trying not to watch the Cavs game. My daughter Sophia is like, "Dad, you got to see this. The Cavs are killing the Bucks by 20." I'm like, "Oh my God." Ran upstairs, watched the game with her. She's 8. And my 8-year-old daughter, huge Cavs fan, loves Kevin Love. We watched the rest of the game and I'm like, oh, we got so much to talk about. So let's get going. Let's unpack all this.
Before we do so, as always, make sure to follow us on Twitter at All Things Cavs. And of course, folks, if you have not already, check out all of the great podcasts and content along with all of the articles on BelieveInMediaLLC.com. But we have to talk about this team because they are 1.5 games back of first place in the Eastern Conference. It wasn't easy. They obviously took a little bit of a setback with the L last week to the Chicago Bulls in Chicago. A tough game that the Bulls really controlled just throughout the game. It really just never felt like the Cavs were truly into that game. But then they bounced back. And, for some reason, it always feels like Oklahoma City this year gave us all the trouble we could handle in the first half. Then we come back and we get them in the second half. Monday night against the New York Knicks was a little bit of a tougher game than expected. I think obviously that has to do with Jared Allen, who missed the game due to a non-COVID illness. And then what happened yesterday evening was just, I could not get over what happened. And by the way, before we get into it, I do have to admit this, that if you guys don't know, I'm mostly in charge of the All Things Cavs Twitter account. I had tweeted out yesterday to hype our game that it was Darius Garland's birthday. I did not know that it was also Pangos' birthday and that it was also Isaac Okoro's birthday. So we had a little birthday celebration yesterday. I didn't want to swipe those two, so I wanted to mention that right here on the podcast. But then these Cavs come out, and the first quarter was a little rocky. The Bucks were getting there. They started off with, I think, 5 or 6 from 3. Really felt like that they were hitting their stride. They were up by double digits early in the first quarter. And it was like, here we go again. My biggest fear started. We can't beat great teams with their superstars. And then Kevin Love and Jenny Osmond turned back the clock to the 2018 version of themselves when the Cavs last faced Golden State in the NBA Finals. They kept the Cavs afloat. They kept the momentum going, which is knocking down threes from every part of the building in Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. And then this team took over the second best rated defensive team in the NBA, Joey Snyder. Held the Milwaukee Bucks, the defending NBA world champions, to 99 points last night. I think that's a story in itself.
I want to say this. Giannis, after the game, said, and I'm quoting him, "This is not the Cleveland that we knew in the past years. They are a playoff team, and they're fighting for the title themselves." You have arguably one of the best players in the NBA, top 3 in my opinion, saying this is a title team. This is a title contender. When you have superstars, the defending champion, saying this is a team that is going to fight for the championship, that's high praise, and that means teams know. So like you said, the quick little breakdown. We had a hiccup with Chicago. I thought that was a game we should have won. They didn't have Lonzo Ball. They didn't have Zach LaVine. They didn't. They had DeRozan. They had Vucevic, and they had a couple of rookies step up, play big. Cavs just didn't seem like they were into it. You're going to have games like that, but that should have been a game that they could have, that they should have. I think they should have won. They didn't. If they had won, we'd only be a half game out of first place right now. But you're not going to win them all. Then they came out 2 really ugly wins against the Pelicans and the Knicks, and that's the way it goes. Sometimes you put out masterpieces. Sometimes you got to play in the mud and pull out those wins. And like you said, against the Bucks, against the big teams, and we've talked about this, they got to beat the big teams. We said they needed to beat the Nets. Yeah, yes, the Nets didn't have KD. They still had Kyrie. They still have Harden, and they won. The defending champs last night. Not only did they win, it was a statement. Another statement win against the Nets was a statement win. Against the Bucks is a statement win, and it wasn't just a statement win. It was saying we can beat you with our starting lineup, and then we can go to the bench and we can go to Kalo. We can go. Kevin Love turning back time, playing like Kevin Love from not when LeBron was here, playing like Kevin Love when he was on the Timberwolves, putting up 20 and 10 on a consistent basis. And then return of the Chetty, like, good Lord, the last Jedi. I don't care. Like, every Star Wars reference you can with him. 23 points. This guy he has played, like we've talked about this again, previous podcasts. He got his contract this year. And a lot of us were like, why are we extending Chetty Osman? And he is playing like a man who has 100% deserved that extension. And we're all going, this is why we don't run the Cavs. Because those are the types of decisions that can make or break a team. If you asked me at the beginning of the year, like we did our breakout players, I 100% should have picked Chetty Osman. Because I did not think that he was going to be as good as he is. He is one of the most reliable pieces off of the bench, and I think one of the better bench players in the entire NBA. Obviously Kevin Love, I think is going to be, I think, a 6th man of the year. But I would say Osman's a top 20 bench player in my opinion, and maybe it's because I'm a homer, but the kid can ball. And he, him and Love, over 40 points combined off the bench really propelled us to that Bucks win. We went 3-1 in our last 4, a game and a half out of first place. Right now, number 3 seed in the East. This Cavs team, let's go.
So I had mentioned last week as well, because we were talking about trade scenarios, and guys, we promised this week we're not going to talk about a lot of trade scenarios. We absolutely promised. That's all we've been doing the last month, it feels like. But last week I had said, besides Kevin Love and Chetty Osman, where the heck is this bench production going to come from? Because it seems like those were the only 2 that could score. And last night, this Cavs bench outscored Milwaukee. I know the Cavs got over 50 points, and Milwaukee only had like 9 bench points. So it was like a 40-point differential. Obviously, most of those and obviously came from Kevin and Chetty, but you also had Rajon Rondo step up. And I thought it was significant because Monday night against the Knicks was his first home game as a Cleveland Cavalier after missing his 6 games. And Rondo has come back like the seasoned veteran he is. And when Darius Garland needs a rest but enter the point guard, Rondo is still able to manage that. And it just doesn't feel like we have missed a beat. And so, I was just so impressed last night because this team could have, again, as I mentioned, Milwaukee came out, they blitzed us early. They hit 5 and 6 threes. Giannis was dominating. It feels like he just couldn't miss. And then in the second half, the Cavs made the adjustment. They pretty much formed the wall that has been the formula to beat Milwaukee in the playoffs before. You brought over Jared Allen. You brought over Evan Mobley, who absolutely destroyed. I don't remember who the Bucks defender was, but he had a great LU pass.
It was Giannis.
Was it Giannis?
He posterized Giannis. And you know what? I want to go back to, I want to say, what was it, the second game of the season when, unfortunately, and we have to talk about this, Lauri Markkanen going down with his injury. But when Lauri Markkanen straight up baptized Jokic,
I remember
that dunked last night. What a sick pass from no look pass from Garland to Mobley, who then just absolutely posterized Giannis Antetokounmpo.
And no fear from a rookie.
Nope.
No fear. Just went up, and then again, J.A. doing his thing. You have Kevin Love, you have Dean Wade, who I know that we will talk about, obviously being inserted into the starting lineup, for Markkanen, who had dealt with that injury scare Saturday night against OKC. But everybody came to play last night. They did their job. And one of the most encouraging signs for me was, listen, Giannis got his. He got, 28 or 29. Middleton got his, 21, 22. Bobby Portis scored 20 points. And they still didn't even reach 100 points.
I mean, what can you say that we have not already said? This team is built on defense. It's built on running out in transition. JB Bickerstaff has done an amazing job with this team, and everyone is buying in. The Cavs are at 30 wins already. The Cavs are at 30 wins. Who would have? I don't think most people thought the Cavs would win 30 games all season. I don't even know if you thought they'd win 20 games all season.
I thought they'd win about 30. So
that's a lie. He's lying, ladies and gentlemen. Excuse me. But they're 30 and I think 30 and 19 now.
Yes.
Yeah. This team is buying into what the coaching staff is selling. They're executing perfectly, and when they're not, they're finding ways to still get it done. And that's what good teams do. Now, how they finish the season, that's going to be what great teams do. They're a game and a half out of first place. However, as much as we talk about, they're a game and a half out of first, or they're a third. This East is so clogged. I mean, look at Charlotte. Charlotte's I think they're 27 and 20 or something like that.
I know the top 6 teams in the East are separated, folks, by 2 games.
Yeah, it's absolutely that's just a clogged mess up there. But if the Cavs can keep pulling off these wins, and they're going to have a lot of really good opportunities to keep rattling off wins here coming up, that's what they got to do. Just stay the course, play your game, play your defense, run in transition, look for the open man if he's got the 3. I know that you were I think we're 19th in threes or something, like 19th or 22nd in 3-point shooting, something around there. But it doesn't seem like it, does it?
It depends on the game. Some games it feels like we have trouble scoring to me, and it just feels like the Knicks game was a very defensive-minded, oriented game. Shots were not really falling till the second half. And then there's some games like last night where it feels like if they wanted to, they could put up 130.
Right. Yeah. I don't know why. It seems like they're a much better 3-point shooting team than their numbers suggest. But maybe it's because when we need the 3, we hit the 3.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what it is. But there's nothing that you can really complain about right now with this team. I do want to jump into we've talked a lot about the starters, some of the bench players, and we've talked about this gentleman a little bit. But what about Dean Wade? What an amazing job he's been doing.
Dean, and I know I mentioned this a couple podcasts ago, when he was inserted into the lineup because of potential, dealing with COVID with Kevin and Laurie, he played a lot. And then after that, it was like when they came back, he almost fell out of the rotation. And when Markkanen went down, I was interested to see if he was going to start. I was wondering, maybe do they keep him on the bench? Do they put Jetty Osman in the starting lineup? Because we've seen that occasionally. So when Dean came out, that wasn't necessarily a surprise, but I was like, okay, this is his opportunity. And the one thing about Dean Wade, and folks, I just realized this. I can't believe I didn't know this. Dean Wade is undrafted. He was not drafted. So to be this type of player, and it feels like every time he comes into the game, he just makes plays, whether it's on defense, whether it's shooting the three ball, whether it's just being there, for a rebound, rushing out, getting picks. He's doing everything that obviously he's not as tall as a Markkanen, but he's doing, I don't want to say everything that Markkanen can do, but he's just stepping up there. He's making big plays. And again, it just feels like when you have a guy that you can say, okay, this guy's out tonight, or this guy's not struggling, D, get in there and go play. He's confident, and that's the one thing I've noticed about him is when he shoots the ball or when he's on defense, if he's missing, 3 or 4 shots in a row, he's not lowering his head down and saying, man, it's not affecting him on the defensive end. He's just boom, boom, boom. He's everything that you can ask for.
You know who else was undrafted?
I saw it. I'm trying to remember.
Lamar Stevens.
That's it. Yep. I was trying to remember and I could not remember off the top of my head.
And I think for as much as we talk about the bench and we're talking about Dean Wade and how great he's been playing, and it just seems like whenever he gets his opportunities, he's always like there. He's doing everything that's asked of him and more. But let you just run down this team real quick. Obviously you got Garland starting, you got Okoro starting right now. You have let's assume, pretend Markkanen is not. Let's
Mobley,
Markkanen and Mobley, Allen. Exactly. Now then you go to the bench. You got Rondo, veteran presence. You got Love, who is playing like the 6th man of the year. You got Chetty, who is, in my opinion, one of the better bench players in the league. You have Stevens, who pretty much won us the game. I think it was a Nets game, wasn't it? Came out, scored the first 13 Cavs points in the second half.
Well, that was against Utah.
I'm sorry, Utah. That's what that game was at. But still, Utah's a great team, and he comes out looking like LeBron. You have Dean Wade. Windler's been getting more minutes. The bench seems to have gotten deeper as the season has gone on, and it seems like just like how every single game we don't know who's going to get hot as who the starters. Is Jared Allen going to go for 15 and 20 or 20 and 10? Is Mobley going to go for a double-double? Is Garland going to go for 30 and 15, some crazy numbers? Who on the bench is Markkanen, is he going to go for 20, whatever? Who on the bench is getting high? Is Kalo going to keep up what he's been doing? Is Chetty going to get hot? What about, is there going to be someone else like a Stevens or a Dean Wade? It could be anybody. And that's what makes this team so great.
Yeah, it's a great point because, over the last couple of games and over the last couple of podcasts, we talked about, hey, Darius Garland's really making himself a case to make that all-star team here in Cleveland with a bunch of competition at the guard. And over the last couple of games, even last night against Milwaukee, Garland hasn't played great. But you have other guys stepping up, like a Love, like an Osman, like an Okoro occasionally, like a Stevens. It's like the defense, we talked about this all year, but it's more true, I think, now than ever. The defense is like, well, we still have to pay attention to him because even though he's not shooting that great, he could get hot because, even Kevin Love against the Knicks, the first half, it was ugly. He couldn't really buy a bucket. And then the third quarter, he comes out and goes 3, and then the deep 3 that really, it felt like at that point blew the game open. It was a 13-point lead. Obviously, we gave it up, but we were able to maintain it. And then last night, Rajon Rondo pops one from the logo. I'm like, Rondo, what are you doing? Swish, boom. And it's like, what is going on?
Are we in the upside down?
Man, I like, seriously, I'm like, 5 years ago, and this maybe just shows how much the NBA has changed. Rondo could make a shot from outside 10 feet. Now he's making one from outside the logo. Like, it's just like, how do you defend this?
That's what, and you really can't say enough that the makeup of this team, there is a clear identity for what this team is. It is defense, it is 3-and-D, but then you have those or not 3-and-D, it's defense, it's running in transition, but then you have those moments where you have someone like Rondo hitting that ridiculous three. You have Markkanen, like, what was it, like 5 or 6 threes in a row. You got that against Houston, Isaac Okoro with a man-type dunking it on 3 guys. You got Markkanen with, baptizing Jokic. You have Mobley
with the
post. I mean, there's so many moments already in this season that you're like, we've been waiting for this forever. This is what we're waiting for. This team is, not only are they good, and let me say this, because this has been making me angry. ESPN, do better. Do better. What was the bigger game last night? The Heat against the Knicks or the Cleveland freaking Cavaliers and the Milwaukee Bucks?
They flexed us one time, and I don't mean to interrupt, but since you brought it up, I was thinking the exact same thing, okay? They flexed us one time, folks. If you're not aware, our Sunday, March 6th game against the Toronto Raptors, which I believe that game is in Toronto. I don't think it's here. I can double check that. But it's going to be flexed to ESPN. It's a 7:30 start. It was a 6 p.m. start. That is the only game right now, currently, out of the whole 82-game season, the Cavs are scheduled either on ESPN or TNT primetime. I mean, what a joke. That Chicago game last week, even though we lost the game, at the time, we thought that was pretty much for the number 1 seed at that point in the season in the Eastern Conference. Nah, let's not flex the Cavs. Then last night, you got the defending world champion Milwaukee Bucks taking on a Cavs team, which I believe last night was the biggest regular season home game for this Cavs team since 2018 when LeBron James was still here. I'm saying it and I believe it. They come out, they perform. Nah, let's not put the Cavs on ESPN. And then their Twitter account has the audacity to put, are the Cavs for real? Of course they're for real. Like, are you kidding me? It's just the lack of, like, when they started this season, it was, oh my God, look how great the Cavs are. Oh my, and now we don't get any coverage. Are you kidding me? You want to talk about a Lakers team with LeBron, AD, and Russell Westbrook that are at 500 or under 500? You want to talk about that team more than this Cavs team, which is the shock of the league? Give me a break, man. I don't mean to go on a Stephen A. Smith rant, but there you go, Joey.
Yeah, and I got to give it up. Kendrick Perkins. It seems like every time the Cavs play, Perk is on Twitter going, give this team some media attention. Same with Bill Simmons. There's like very few people who are actually talking about this team. And I don't know why they're not getting the national coverage that they deserve. Who the hell wants to watch the Knicks and the Heat? Okay, I can understand the Heat because they're number one seed. Got it. They're not playing. That game did not have any bearing on, nothing. It was just another game. Meanwhile, you have the 3 and 4 seed going at it, the defending champions against one of the most exciting teams in the NBA and the Cavaliers, and we can't even get that on national TV. It's ridiculous. Do better, ESPN. Fix it.
By the way, another point, and I mentioned this way back on the first podcast, because we are on Bally Sports Ohio, which I'm not saying anything bad about Bally Sports at all. Obviously, the great crew is great, but a lot of people do not get Bally Sports are, especially people that have cut
Mhm.
cable or done some streaming service, or it's just not a part of their package. So for them, the only way they can see the Cavs is either paying for League Pass or streaming or some other medium or watching on ESPN. It's like, can you please help these people out? But I do want to transition really quick because I do think there's some good news and some bad news about the Cavs' Achilles heel. And I have noticed it. Austin Carr had even mentioned, I think it was the Knicks game on the broadcast. We really struggled from the free throw line. We're not a very good free throw shooting team. But as I said, I have some good news. The Cavs right now, let me get this stat right. The Cavs right now are 20th in the league at free throws. They are at 75.8%. Now, that's obviously not good. However, there was a team that won the NBA championship shooting worse a free throw percentage than this current Cleveland Cavaliers team. That team was our very own Cleveland Cavaliers team in 2016. That team, folks, when we had LeBron, we had Kevin Love, we had Kyrie, we had JR, we had some pretty good free throw shooters on that team. We shot as a team 74.3% from the free throw line, which was, I believe, at that point, 24th in the league. So there is some hope. But if this team is going to compete, and I think last night showed that this Cavs team has the potential to beat anybody in the Eastern Conference as we've been talking about. But in close playoff games, because we know the Cavs are going to be in a ton of close playoff matchups with presumably a Milwaukee or a Brooklyn, I think it's bound to happen that we meet one of those two teams at some point. They're going to have to make their free throws, and last night, we shot 14 to 17 from the free throw line, which is 82%. That will work. And if we can get our guys like Mobley, who shot a couple that were just a little line drive. Usually Mobley's been a pretty good free throw shooter. Jared Allen for a center has not been, great as a free throw shooter, but he's pretty good for a center at the free throw line. If those guys can just consistently knock down their free throws, we could be talking about a team that, maybe goes from winning a couple of these Knicks Thunder games by 2, 3, 4, 5 points to a team that wins by 10 points because we're just leaving points off the board.
I got to tell you, I love the ugly games. I agree 100% on the free throw shooting because you could tell there's just games where you're like, why? How are they missing so many free throws? And you might say it once or twice in your head, but then you start, you hear the stats, and truthfully, 20th in the league, it's not 75%. It's not terrible. You're not last. You're below average, but you're not terrible. So that's something that they can still fix throughout the course of the season. But I gotta tell you, I love those ugly wins. Like when you're playing terrible and you still pull out the win, that is a really good experience to have. That's really good experience to have for later on. That if you're playing D, you're playing your heart out on D, your offense isn't clicking, we could still pull out this game. It's a great confidence booster. So I love those ugly wins. Not all the time. Sometimes I want to see some blowouts, but those ugly wins, that's good experience for later on in the season, and that's definitely confidence booster for these players. Now, I do want to get to one more thing here, and we're not going to talk too much about trades today, as Brandon said, but I want to say something, and we've talked a lot about trades, and I'm sure next week we're probably going to talk even more about trades because this trade deadline is going to be here in 2 weeks.
I believe so. It's Thursday, February 10th.
Yeah.
So 2 weeks from today, yes.
So we'll actually only have one more episode, and then the next time we record probably might be the trade deadline. I don't, there's players that I've liked, players I would like for the Cavs to get. but when you're working the front office, you have to look at money. You have to look at what players can we afford? Who do we have to re-sign? There's a lot more that goes into it than just, oh, I like this guy, let's go out and get him. So I've really been thinking about this. I may have made a mistake by saying we should trade Colin Sexton. And I'm going to say that I 100% am going to flip-flop on my stance. We are looking for a player who can score 15 to 20 points a game. We're looking for a player who can play defense. We're looking for a player who can grow with the team. Colin Sexton, the young bull, he's that player. We were 7-4 with Colin Sexton before he got hurt. He was averaging 18 points a game. He was being a leader in the locker room. He wasn't being selfish with the ball. He was playing lockdown D, and he was throwing down ferocious dunks for a guy who's 6'1", 6'2". I mean, I don't think we've talked about he wants 100 million. He's not getting 100 million, not from anybody. But we might be able to get him for 4 years, 60 million, 3 years, 50 million, something along those lines. Something good for him, where if he plays well, we'll get him on the next one. He's young. He's, I think, 24? I believe 23 or 24.
I can double check that real quick.
He was the first building piece of this Cavs team. And, like we said in the very first podcast,
he's 23.
He's 23 years old. Like we said in the very first podcast, he was the best player on the worst team for, a few years, scoring a lot of points. But the small sample size we've had this year, which was 11 games, they were 7-4. He was playing lockdown D. He was throwing down ferocious dunks. He was hitting the three. He wasn't being selfish. He was being, and Rubio even came out and said that Colin Sexton is emerging as a locker room leader. Why go out and spend assets that you don't need to when you have a player that you're going to be able to potentially re-sign, have for the long haul, have grow with this team? We keep talking about how young this team is and need to grow. Why are we going to get rid of a 23-year-old who was a fringe all-star player last year? I mean, we've talked about how we don't think him and Garland's game mesh. If he can accept his role as a shooting guard, he's not going to be the primary ball handler. He's going to be the guy that you're going to go to score. That's what we need him to be. And then on the other end, lockdown D. Fight to win those, to scrap for that ball, get those steals. He's always been great at stealing the ball. If he can accept that role, much like Kevin Love has accepted his role on the bench, let me ask you this: if Colin Sexton accepted his role at shooting guard, like Kevin Love accepts his role as a bench player now, how much better would this Cavs team be?
So, Joey, we have agreed on almost everything that we have talked about. This is episode 14 for me. This is episode 15. Obviously, I had to deal with being out one episode, which killed me. Thank you, Kevin Sledge, for filling in. But obviously, I had to deal with COVID protocol. But Joey, you and I, this will be our 14th episode recording together. We have rarely had a disagreement. I'm sorry. I've been saying it for the last year. When I make up my mind on something, it's usually hard for me to change it, especially when it comes to players and evaluation in sports. Sometimes I can admit I've been wrong, and I do so all the time about certain players. Maybe they're not as projected as good or bad as I think they are. But I think the Cavs have had, 2, almost 3 years to figure out if this Sexton Garland experiment will work. And I think defensively, I don't think it works. I don't think you can have 2 6'1" guards on the floor at the same time. I agree with you. If Sexton was able to be more of the shooting guard, and maybe take a back seat, because from what I've seen, in my opinion, Darius Garland is the better player. I think to me right now, that is undisputable. If you had to pick between the two, you would choose Garland, and you wouldn't even have to think twice about it. So if I'm the Cavs, I'm sitting here thinking, and I'm going, okay, we've had Sexton for what? This would be year 3, year 4, right? Isn't this year 4? Yeah, I believe it would be year 4 of Sexton.
This year 4, yeah.
So you should know what you have in Colin Sexton by year 4. And I've said it over and over again on the podcast, and I looked it up this morning. Darius Garland averaged 15 and 8 when him and Sexton were both on the court this season. That's not bad, 15 and 8, but we kept saying, come on, Garland, you got to be more aggressive. You got to take that next leap. And since Sexton has been out, Garland has averaged 6 more points a game, which isn't much. It's 21. But he's had some games where he goes for 30, almost 30, he goes for 28, he goes for 26, he goes for 25, he goes for 30. We were not seeing that at all with Sexton. Sexton was more of the kind of scorer. He would bring the ball up, and defensively, I think Okoro being in the starting lineup, because he's taller, he's 6'5". Like, I feel like if Sexton comes off the bench with Rondo, who's a defensive-minded guard, and you can let Sexton, kind of run the offense a little more at the 2, I think it could work. But out of the guys that we've been talking about, like a Karis LeVert, like a Gary Trent, like a Buddy Hield, they may be a little bit older, and they may be, a little more expensive, but also the length and the playoff experience and that type of matter. I just think it's hard, because I think Colin Sexton is going to want that money, and I don't see, you're right, I don't see him getting it, but I don't know if he knows that he's not going to get it yet. And I am fearful that if you do not trade Sexton now, I think at least there's a better chance he leaves and we get nothing for him than him staying.
We're not talking trades, so I'm not going to, but I will say, if we trade, if we do end up trading Colin Sexton, I think that he needs to have a much higher premium on him, because a lot of these teams are saying they want a good young player back. He's a very good young player. So when people, let's trade, let's throw in Colin Sexton. Oh no, Colin Sexton should be the piece. That should be what teams want. He's a good young player. I went back and watched a bunch of games from earlier this year, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, man, this kid is so good. Like, and I think that, I understand where you're coming from with the Garland, and he scored, but that he's scoring more because he has to, because we're missing that offensive production that Sexton was providing. We're looking to go out and, make a trade to get more offense. We have that offense here.
But what's gonna change? And here is the other factor. The fact that, let's say you're in a postseason series. Let's say, maybe it's the first round, maybe it's the second round of the playoffs. Sexton is ready to come back. Okay, just for example, let's say it's game 1 of a series. Don't you think it's going to take time to get back on the court, get that chemistry back? Because this Cavs team is playing different.
But let me have a rebuttal for this. When you said what's changed from the previous years, we had Jared Allen for half a season last year. We didn't have Lauri Markkanen. We didn't have Evan Mobley. We didn't have Rubio or Rondo, like the veteran presence like we do now. Kevin Love wasn't coming off the bench. This is a very different team than the team that was last year, or any team that we've had since we took Sexton. And Sexton was buying into it. And that, just like that, like I keep going back to that game where Rubio said that Sexton is becoming a locker room leader. And in my mind, I'm like, man, like, why are we? So there is a much different, if Colin Sexton buys into the same thing that everyone else is bought into, I don't know if I see the value. And on top of that, you can't forget, he's not an unrestricted free agent this year. He's a restricted free agent. So whatever we offer him, another team has to beat it. If we give him 4 years, 60 million, another team has to go, okay, well, now we're going to offer him 5 years, 80 million. How many teams are going to have that amount of money? Not many. So unless a deal is, like, in my mind, at least unless a deal is truly going to blow me away, I don't know. We're 30-19. It's very hard for me to go, okay, Karis LeVert's the answer to what we need. Not that I don't love Karis LeVert, because I would love for him to be on the Cavs. And like you said, you do have that time period from trade deadline to the end of the season to get the chemistry down. But I just keep thinking, like, is that worth it?
Joey,
I would rather
curious. Well,
I'm
curious because Sexton, obviously he came out. This is the reason why we're talking about this. He came out last week and pretty much said, like, hey, when it's playoff time, I'm going to be ready to go. I'm curious because he could have said that 2 weeks ago. He could have said that 3 weeks ago when there was trade speculation popping up about him. I'm curious if the Cavs front office told him, we're not moving you. Because I feel like the rumors have calmed down a little bit over the last week.
Yeah, 100%. And if you look, a lot of the rumors now are more of the Cavs moving Rubio's contract and maybe a second round or first round pick for somebody. There's not really big names that we're talking about. And there was a report that with Rubio and Sexton have been in constant contact with the front office, so they don't feel so isolated, and that they feel like they feel a part of the team. So with that being said, maybe he was told he isn't going to get moved. Now
that's what I'm saying, is because, and also, by the way, over the last couple of games, he's been back out of the bench. I don't know if that's just coincidence or, again, obviously we know he's had surgery, but like, I feel like you're right. It feels like over the last week, the momentum has completely shifted. Where it felt like 2 weeks ago, it was always inevitable. Hey, Colin Sexton's going to get dealt. That was kind of the sense around the week. And now it's flipped all the way to, hey, they might deal Rubio. They might not even deal Rubio. They may stand pat. So who knows there? But we do have to wrap up the podcast for today. Really quickly, though, the Cavs do have a somewhat of a 2 to 3 game structure coming up. We're not going to really preview a lot of these games because they do have to go to Detroit on Sunday. They will host the Pelicans then on a back-to-back on Monday. And then they will take on the Houston Rockets in Houston next Wednesday. Look, we all know the Cavs are playing 3 of the worst teams in the NBA right now. They should go 3-0 in those games. 1 or 2 of those games are probably going to be tough games. We know what the Pelicans did to us when we went to New Orleans there a little bit after Christmas, especially coming off a back-to-back. Those are sometimes hard. So potentially look for that game and maybe be the hardest of the trip. But without a doubt, to me, we should come back here 3-0 and being only 1.5 games out. And this is the last point that I wanted to make today because I made it really quickly last week. But with Lonzo Ball being out now for the Chicago Bulls, along with Levine, and with Kevin Durant being out for the Brooklyn Nets, folks, the Cavs have a great opportunity here with this soft schedule to take advantage, and it's very realistic. We saw Brooklyn just lose back-to-back games at home against the Denver Nuggets and against the Los Angeles Lakers. And thank you, Kyrie Irving, for deciding to not get vaccinated in a city that required you to get vaccinated to enter an indoor arena. And with Kevin Durant being hurt, and with James Harden sometimes missing games, the Cavs have a great opportunity here to, when we record next week, folks, they do have a chance to be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. Unbelievable.
So we got 3 games before our next podcast, right?
Correct.
So let's just real quick. We don't got to preview them, but just name it off again.
So at Detroit.
Win.
Home against the Pelicans.
Win.
At Houston.
Win. I'm not even gonna. I don't even. 3-0. It's not even. I don't see a reason in any way, shape, or form that they are not going to go 3-0. That's locked. That's my. If we come back next week, I'll eat crow. Okay. But come on, 3-0. The next week we should be coming back on this podcast. Cavaliers are 33-19 in either first or second seed. That's what we should be. We'll be talking about.
I completely agree with you. All right, Joey, we have to wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for listening to us, either in video or in audio form. Mr. Schneider, you got the last words for today.
Want to give a shout out to my man Marty, a guy who I know, who I work with, doesn't get Bally's. And like you said, it's not available everywhere. Doesn't get it, but loves the Cavs. Tries to follow them as much as he can. We always talk about it all the time. So shout out to Marty. He listens to the podcast every now and again. Great guy. And you know what? Thank you to everyone who listens, because without you guys, this wouldn't be nearly as fun. So we're going to keep doing it for as long as we possibly can, because it's a blast and we enjoy that you guys enjoy it. We love doing it. And Brandon, last thing, you know what to do.
Let 'em go!